So we've done almost all of the UI now. The last thing to do is style these buttons with the icons we made, and then we can get straight onto the view models. So let's just take a look. So the first thing we want to do is let's try and include a icon in one of these buttons. So let's just start with button 1. We'll get rid of the content from here. And if we remember rightly, if we do an image, which I think we just do image, and then image.source, was it? And then in here, we can now do the SVG image with, is it source or path? I could have sworn it was, yeah, I think it's this way. And then you leave the path off, assets. Then the first one is the Volt DC. So that will be in assets mode VDC. So this will be mode-vdc.svg. And if we did that right, we should have seen something by now. So we've obviously got the syntax wrong somewhere there. Is it just because I think we put an image inside of an image? Is that just literally the string in there maybe? I can't remember. Yeah, there we go. So now we have an icon. We want the color to be, and this is where it's a little bit trickier. We want the color to be this gray. And then on hover, I want them all to be a different color. And when they click, I want them to be a different color. So we'll have to think about how we do that. I'd like to do it just directly in these buttons if we could, but then you're going to have different hover effects and things. So we'll have to see how that goes. What we can do for now is do a CSS, and then was this just, I think it was in curly braces here like CSS. No, that doesn't look right. I think maybe then this, and it was buttons and then curly. Yeah, it's literally CSS, isn't it? I think. Fill colon 33FFFFFF. Do it not do transparency? No, I mustn't do transparency. There we go. So this wants to be then whatever color this is. So 7C. We want this to be. There we go. And that'll be the normal color. And then on hover, this is where I want the color to be different. So I don't know whether, again, just for ease, do we just do button.styles and embed them? I know it's a little bit long-winded, but selector is button, colon, pointer over, setter, property, and then, was it svg image.css? I think that was the selector. Value then, do we do this and change it to, just try yellow, which is, I can't remember to be honest, OOFFFF maybe. Maybe the selector then needs to select the SVG inside maybe. It doesn't seem to do anything. Maybe just try the SVG without the button. No, maybe we can't do it inside of the button. Let's just try in the window for now. And let's just try SVG in general. Is it maybe this? If not, we'll look at the documentation. No, nothing seems to be working. Move that back into there. So unfortunately, I think this is going to have to be a lot more complicated than I wanted it to be, to just set the color of an SVG. I think I'm going to have to, this is probably going to be binding. So let's try CSS test. Let's put something in here, public string CSS test, get equals, and then we'll put the string in here first. Buttons, fill, like that. Compile and see if this works. It should do. Binding to, there we go. So now we've got a view property. Now we need to trigger when the button is hovered over. We need to then change the CSS test value, and this will be bound to each button maybe. So it's a bit long-winded. That's the quickest way I can think of achieving this at the minute. Unless we had, see, even if we had a custom button per one, like a class per one, the styles don't seem to be working. It's as if we can't set the CSS on a style. even if you check the syntax, this is what we've tried pretty much. I've tried SVG, svg.css, tried all those. This doesn't seem to be working, even though apparently it should. That exact setter doesn't work. So if we do, say, button.styles, and then in here, do an SVG, on here, do buttons, and fill it with a different color. You can see that just doesn't change. You can try even button, nothing. Go into the template, nothing. You can delete the CSS off there. You can delete that. Just nothing ever seems to work, basically. So even though we got the syntax right, I don't think that's a viable option. So instead, I think we're going to have to use this and then a combination of these Avalonia XAML behaviors. So we need to install this package. We go to here, .NET, add that, and of course it hasn't found it. Let's just use NuGet package instead. Get these, add in here, and this should then allow us to use the behaviors, which we should be able to achieve what we want now. So if we take a look at these behaviors, we want to check doing one thing here. So we need something like this, interactive behaviors, event name, and then we want some kind of pointer over. So bind pointer over event, pointer over cursor behavior. So you got pointer enter, so event trigger behavior. I wonder if we just do this, event trigger behavior, which is what this is. So let's just try pointer over, focus control no. So now we need to do some action. Simplest thing is change property action to see if this is working. Background to red, that doesn't work, so it is visible to false, and this will probably just flicker the button if it works, but let's just see if that works. No, so that's doing nothing. Let's try pointer enter. Nothing. Nothing working for us. Let's try the click. Okay, so the binding's working because when I've clicked, the button's disappeared. So let's leave it as click for now. Let's try set. In fact, let's just see if we can set the property name now. So can we set SVG? No, it's not going to work. Let's just try it anyway for the fun of it, but this is obviously not going to work. No, I'm not liking this. This definitely seems too complicated. We shouldn't need all this to change properties. Let's redo this. There's got to be a way of doing this simpler than what we're doing here. Let's scrap the behaviors. Let's port. What did we have in here now? We want the image.source SVG image. Now, can we just replace the SVG image instead? In fact, can we replace the image altogether and just use a path? Path data, and I'm pretty sure because we've made these, all these SVGs are going to be pretty much just one path. So we've got an ID, but then we're just going to have a path, I think, in every one. So that's a path. Let's just double check. That's a path. I don't think there's anything more complicated than a path in all the ones we've made. Yeah, so we should be able to just use the path directly instead of the SVG file. So let's start with this one, the voltage DC. Go to the path, and we'll take this data here. This is just a SVG path data. Let's paste it into here, and we've probably not seen anything because it is obviously 2048 pixels wide, or 2048 units wide. So let's chuck that inside of a view box, which will just automatically scale everything to fit. Maybe compile. We've got to fill. There we go. So we've got the icon now as a path instead of an SVG. So now can we do what we were going to do, which was button styles. And then style, selector, button, and then what is it, viewbox, path, and then setter, property, I don't know, is visible, value false. Yes, we've got a selector. So now, can we set the fill is the question. Fill value orange. Oh, it doesn't work again. Oh, hang on. Let's remove that altogether. There we go. And now can we have another selector with pointer over, red. Yes, there we go. So now we've got the hover effect we want. So how do we apply this now for each button? We could do this and copy and paste each button for a different color, which I don't mind doing again because this is such a small app. We could probably make this into a custom control and do some fancy binding, but to be honest, I think I'm just going to make a button per one very specifically. Because the only other thing we want is the hover on the border. So let's make one button fully and see how hard it is and how much code it is to copy and paste. So on the button, hover, oh actually that needs to stay. This goes to button hover, border brush, let's do red again. Let's also do as just the button itself, in here, do border brush, border thickness 2. We don't need a font size now either. Or a foreground, or a background, I don't think. Well, actually, we do want the transparent background, so when we hover, we get the effect. Border thickness doesn't seem to be working now. Or let's try border brush, red. Yeah, so we've got a border. But this isn't working, so is this where we had to do the template border, was it? I can't remember on the button. This is where the template doesn't work. On buttons, if we remember rightly, we did it in batch process again. And if we look back at the template on GitHub again, it was this we needed to style. And I think it's obvious here, there. You can see we have this. So we want to basically copy this selector, replace this. There we go. So now we have the hover border. We want the corner radius. I don't know, 20 maybe, bit much, 15. And now we've got a random offset there, which I don't remember having before. So the view box, or our SVG is offset here. I think that's because there's no size on it, so let's just undo that. I think all we've got to do is specify the size specifically. So in here, yeah, let's do width 2048. Yeah, there we go. Height 204. We just needed to define the size, and now it fits in. So we can get rid of that. I don't think the fill needs to change. I think that's the default. There we go. So now we have a view box we're getting there now. And what we could do is bind the data to custom properties to make it a bit easier than dumping it all in here, or we can just dump it in for now. So that's close to what we want. We want this to be grey. So instead of being orange by default, we wanted this to be 7C, 7C, 7C. That does that. And then when you hover, what's wrong with that? There we go. When you hover, it wants to be a certain colour. And when we click it, it would then stay a certain colour. So I don't know whether, to be honest, we want the... I think the hover doesn't want the border. But when we activate it, when we set it to active, we want a border. So that would just mean the border thickness then. Or the border brush wants to be transparent. And when it's active, we then want it to be red. So that would be button.active, like that. And then there's no no border. But if we then added to the button class active, you then get the border. So we can control this then. When we click, it will go to enter that mode, but until we actually set it to active, it won't show. So what we also want then is probably a middle state where we click the button, we tell the multimeter to change, but while it's pending, we put a border outline with like this light grey colour. So we want the active state and we want the pending state. So if we do another style, and these can be universal, to be honest, these active and pending styles can be universal to, we'll just put them in this window for now. Window.styles, chuck them up here, button active, button pending. Button active can be button C7, C7C, and there you go. So now we have, this is as if somebody's clicked it and it's waiting to change over. And then once they do change over, we'll tag the class with active and it'll get a border. But the color also wants to be set as well. So when it's active, we want that foreground color to be set. So for that, it's going to be specific to each button, but could we? This is where I'm thinking, can we do a binding? So these styles are all universal. Like that, for example, is universal. In here, can we bind to the actual button? So we can just set the button's color and then all the binding takes over. That's what I'm trying to think if we can do. So for that, the only thing we'd need, oh yeah, active in that case is also wrong because active wouldn't be red. We're going to have different active colors per one. So this would actually have to be back in the button itself. So that would have to be here. But this is where I'm thinking, can we bind this instead to itself in a sense? I just think we put the colors in here for now for the quickness. So that would mean border brush and fill. Yeah, it's just going to be a bunch of copying and pasting, I think, is the thing for now. There we go. So if it's active, it's got the same color. And then if it's pending, it goes like this. And if it's got neither, then it's just a button with a hover. So I think they're the three states we need. And then it just means we've got to copy this button over and over, change the data and change the colors. So for the sake of 10 buttons, I think that's the way we're going to roll with this. We could make this into a custom button and a custom class, which is a lot nicer, and then just specify a single color. But for 10 buttons, I'm going to opt for the option of just copying and pasting this over and over, basically. So, like I say, there's multiple ways of doing it, but for now, for quickness, I'm just going to do button 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that's just how we're going to do it. And now in this button, we just need to change the column here to 2, 4, 6, 8, that's them. And then we need the row now to be 4. And then same again, 4, 2, 4, 4, 4, 6, and 4, 8. That's all the buttons. Now I've got a whole bunch of buttons. We now need to change each icon, so we probably want to label these as well. Button voltage DC, like so. And then you get the idea. We're going to go into the next one, which will be 1 over, which will be the current DC. So this will be the IDC. I'm going to go into here, change this data to match the IDC. So we just do this, Alt-Z to word wrap, copy the path, and go to the end, paste it in. And then that should have worked. Why is that now not worked for this one? It's a good start. Is it because it's applied some kind of transform here? Maybe. Yeah, so this one hasn't got a transform. I think because this one's exported with a transform, we need to somehow make sure that's flattened. So let's open up the IDC. Let's do vector, convert to curves, just in case it's not a curve. Export as SVG again. Advanced, we want to text as curves just in case. Relative off, flatten transforms. Export and do IDC. And let's see if that's updated. Yeah, so for some reason that one had got a transform in, so now this path should work. Nope, still not. Oh, 2 M's. There we go. So I just need to make sure none of these have got the transform in. Hopefully that was the only one. That one's got a transform. So I'll go through, reopen them, export them again to remove the transforms. Change these icons and then change these colors. So this one can be like a medium purple maybe. And that gives us this. And then you can check the class if we really wanted. Class, active, and they're going to all select differently. So that's all I'm going to do for these. And that's it. We now have all of the effects and all of the icons. And on the temperature and frequency, I've done a little gradient as well. So we have a nice little fade. The rest are solid. But for temperature and gradient, or temperature and frequency, I've just replaced the fill for a linear gradient. And just done a basic linear gradient in each of those two. And just give it this little, nice touch. I've put this one as active so you can see it. But say you wanted to look at the temperature active, you can just chuck on a class here and do active, and then that's how that would look active as well. So that was a hell of a lot more work than we thought. We also want a bit more spacing actually between the top and the bottom. Let's leave that on. See how we've got a nice big space here, but not much between these. I want a bit more gap there. So let's go to the header. And where do we put it? So we haven't labeled this, you see. We need to comment these, otherwise when you're scrolling up it's hard to tell where you are. So this is what. This is the button control container. This will then be the inner grid for it. So button control grid. So in here, this is where we can do the row definitions. This one probably. Nope, that's the one in between there. So is it this one? There we go. So probably want like that. That's better spacing now. Yep, I like that. The only thing is they're not quite square now because of the padding. But I don't mind that. That slightly oval shape doesn't bother me at all. Yep, so they seem to be all working perfect. So next up, I think it will be the view model. So what we'll do is make a view model that has all of the properties we need to start binding to. And we'll probably make a dummy service as well, so that without interacting with the real meter, we'll make it so when we click a button, it fires off a request to change mode. It tags this with the correct class. When it's finished, then we'll do a pseudo class that changes the mode after 1 second, and that will bind and toggle the buttons. So we want to be able to see the buttons changing mode. And then we do this one after. So it's all the view model work now, really, view model and binding.